Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Hi, and welcome to Straight Talk About God video. I'm Jack. The Lost Tribes and Peter. You know, the Lost Tribes is a very popular subject on the internet. Hundreds of sites, right? And if some of you have seen my Lost Tribes video series, you probably come across the Lost Tribes somewhere, Peter's first book, first letter, okay? I don't remember exactly where it was, it's many years ago, but it's probably in there somewhere. Lost Tribes. What does Peter know? But as I was reading 1 Peter 1 in my daily reading, I thought it would be a good idea to detail out what he says about the Lost Tribes in a video that was dedicated strictly to that, okay? And the very first important thing that we have to notice is to whom Peter is writing. To. It's very important, okay? Here's the first verse of 1 Peter 1:1. Okay? Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, here it comes, to, that's got two different things going on here. To the strangers. Okay, there's strangers. This is to the strangers. And scattered. These scattered strangers. Throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, Bithynia, comma, because that's not the end of the sentence. The rest of the sentence goes in verse 2. But we'll stop here for a second because the thing that we have to keep our focus on is that to, okay? See, that to carries out to the whole end of the book, right? Everything Peter says is directed to those people that he lists, okay? Bithynia, Cappadocia, and so forth, comma, see? Then verse 2 continues the sentence to those strangers. It says, that's a bad translation, you got to look it up, right? It says that they are the elect of God. Elect of God. Well, how can they be strangers? Well, maybe they don't know their individual names, but how can they be strangers and still know that they're... What is Peter talking about here? Eh? What we have to stop and do is remember who are God's elect, right? Chinese? No. Muslims? No. Buddhists? No. See, God's elect are only, all capital letters, only the 12 tribes of Israel, aren't they? Right? They're the ones that he chose out of all the world nations to get the word of his coming kingdom out to the rest of the world. You know? They're the chosen people, the elect. Okay. But that fact drives us back to the word strangers again, right? Because these, quote, strangers are God's elect. All right? So those who have knowledge of the Lost Tribes teaching know that the places that Peter mentions are the exact same places where the Lost Tribes settled. Some of them, not a lot of them, but some of them, all right? Especially in Peter's time, right? So those are all the places where Paul preached and established churches, wasn't he? Huh? Why was that? Huh? And how do we know that? Huh? Because the apostles were told by Jesus personally to go to, don't go here, don't go there, don't go there, go first to the lost sheep of who? The house of Israel. The 10 tribes that became the lost tribes. Go to the lost tribes. Well, how can you go there if you don't know where they are? They know where they are, right? Though that word strangers confirms this by the definition of the word that's translated strangers, all right? It's defined as alien alongside, or resident foreigner. In other words, quote, you elect people are foreign residents of the place you're living. You weren't born there. It's not your nation. You came from a different place, but now you're there and you're a foreigner and okay? Huh? Because of the word elect, then, we can call these people chosen expatriates. Right? Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the chosen Israelite expatriates in all those places. Right? Scattered throughout, so forth. Well, this opens up a whole bunch of other facts, doesn't it? Number one, Peter knows that the lost tribes aren't lost. We think they are, but he doesn't. He knows they're not lost, and he knows where some of them are. Oh, they're completely not lost. Huh? Where did Peter learn that? Where did Peter find that out? A couple of places I know he could have found it out. Jesus could have took the apostles aside one time and said, well, this and this and that. He could have found that out. But I don't think that's where he found it. I think he got it from Paul. He had a lot of talks with Paul, right? Paul went to visit in Jerusalem, didn't talk to anybody but Peter. Right? Okay? Paul spent 3 years being taught by the risen Christ before he went back to Damascus, or to Damascus in the first place, right? He was told by Jesus where to go, who to see, what to say, the whole mission, right? Peter got it from Paul, I'm sure, right? And moreover, Peter might have been one of the apostles that went to Britain, right? There's a place there called the House of the Apostles. And historically, it says that apostles visited there. You know, there was a lot going on in Christianity in Britain. You know, okay. See, Peter had almost 30 years before he wrote that first letter. I've got a note in my Bible that says that he wrote it at 60 A.D. I don't remember where I got that from, but it was good enough to put down, okay? 30 years. He didn't spend all that time over in Babylon, right? That's where he went, but he didn't spend all that time there, right? Remember how in Galatians 2:11, he's with Paul at Antioch. He's visiting there, right? They're eating and whatever, how many days or weeks he spent, who knows, you know? But he was visiting, right? Peter got around, okay? That's the point. Now, secondly, still talking to the lost tribes, verse 5, he talks about how those strangers were kept in the power of God through faith. Faithing, you know, acting in faith on God's word. And then third, he follows up in verse 10, where he says that their salvation was prophesied. But he knows a lot about what's going on here. Right? I prophesied. The prophet said, who prophesied of the grace that should come unto you, he says. He really knows a bunch of stuff here, doesn't he? Huh? He also knows the book of Hosea. And that's one of the reasons why he knows where they are. Okay? Chapter 2, verse 9 and 10, he quotes Hosea, right? First, he confirms what he says in chapter 1 about them being the chosen elect and so forth. He says this, but ye, all you Bithynia and Cappadocia, all ye are a chosen generation, the elect, a royal priesthood, an holy nation, a peculiar people, semicolon, that ye should, why? That ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his light, out of darkness. Darkness. You see, the house of Israel was heavily into paganism for 200 years before Assyria came and conquered Samaria in 721 and took the last of them away, put them up underneath the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea and stuff, right? Right? And of course they continued on in their paganism worship, didn't they? Until Paul showed up and said, hey, Jesus this and Jesus that, you know, act in faith, God's coming kingdom, right? We'll get to that in a second also, right? Paul and other people came there and told them about Jesus and faithing. And then Peter references Hosea's prophecy in verse 10. He says, you people, which in time past were not a people, known as God's people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. See, Hosea says that in the place where they were scattered, strangers scattered, they would become a great number of people. They would become known as the sons of the living God. The ones who Peter was writing to, right? And again, the whole of 1 Peter is to the lost tribes. Now, well, not all 12 of them, some, you know, the ones he mentioned. Paul went to them and established churches, preached and so forth. And Peter visited now and then and wrote him a letter, right? I did 3 other videos on the lost tribes and chapters in Romans. Romans 9, 10, and 11 are the lost tribes chapters of Romans. You can look that up. Paul is complaining to the Jews, comparing the Jews with the lost tribes. Now, although Paul doesn't say specifically the house of Israel, right, he infers that in chapter 9, right? He's telling the Jews why they didn't make it, because they didn't have faith marked with their zeal toward God and so forth. And what the house of Israel will play in their salvation, right? In Romans 9, 6b, second part of the verse, he says this, for they are not all Israel who are of Israel. You Jews, you're not everybody from Israel. There's Israel in a lot of other places. Okay? So there are Israelites living in other places besides Israel. And then in verse 25 and 26, he quotes Hosea, right? As he, God, as he says also in OC, which is Greek for Hosea, okay? I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which were not beloved. 26. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, ye are not my people, there they shall be called the children of the living God. End quote. Okay? In Romans 10, 19, he gets a lot more specific here, just more added evidence, right? He quotes Moses in Deuteronomy 22:21, part B and C of the verse. It says this, God talking, I will move them to jealousy with those who are not a people. There we are, not a people again, right? Not a people, semicolon. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Well, that's certainly what the Jews thought the house of Israel was, a foolish nation doing all their pagan stuff and disowning God and not doing the law and all that. And then, well, good, they were taken away, foolish nation. Paul even goes on to quote Isaiah in 10:22. He says, though a number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, There'll be a lot of number where they go. There'll be numbered multitude, right? A remnant shall be saved. Not all of them, a remnant. These guys that Paul went to preach, they're going to be saved. Everybody Paul preached to didn't get saved, right? A remnant shall be saved. See? Paul knows a lot about the lost tribes. And so does Peter, right? Thanks a lot for watching. God bless.